how do you interpret reports of a sanctioned Iranian LPG tanker passing through the US naval presence near the Strait of Hormuz? Does it suggest a deliberate move or a lack of control?
Control all of this.
They don't have the ability to control, because look, that ship, when it came out of the Iranian port, I'm sure it sailed, it was, say, 12 miles offshore. And it just, as it sailed along, it just stayed 12 miles offshore until it gets, to its Indian Ocean or, maybe the other side of the Gulf of Oman. But I think they're headed towards the Indian Ocean. The U.S. ships are not going to come within 200 miles of the Iranian coast. If they get in like 180, 150 miles off, they are then in range of Iranian ballistic and cruise missiles and drones. So they're not going to do that. It's too risky, which is the point about all this, that the United States has they're not willing to incur the risk of losing so many ships. It's not like we got a lot to lose in the first place.
Larry, if Iran sees this not as a ceasefire but just a pause, with ongoing tensions and incidents, how would you define the current situation, Ormus? Does it suggest a deliberate move or a lack of control?
Well, we're in it's like the eye of a hurricane. Okay, the hurricane, the winds, the high winds, the heavy rain, but the eye passes over. You got a momentary peace, but it's not going to last, because you got the backside of that hurricane coming, which is worse, and that's what's getting ready to happen. Israel's struggling to figure out what it's wanting to accomplish in Lebanon, and the Zionist government is just out of control. And so if they now try to expand the war and go back to bombing Iran's going to turn around and bomb the daylights out of Israel, and it will be bad. And the Israelis will be back to living in bomb shelters like they were for 5 weeks. Israel's been very careful to cover up the amount of damage that was done during those 5 weeks, but you got to be convinced it was far worse than anything they experienced during the 12-day war. And during the 12-day war, there were significant damage done to a variety of facilities and installations, military and industrial, scientific, etc. So, this is, I think this is going to heat up again. And it's not going to, perhaps the only thing that will stop it will be an global economic collapse, because I think that is coming. The February 28th, essentially it lit the fuse on a bomb, and the fuse burns and burns and burns and burns. And then finally, when it finishes its course, it explodes. And it comes relatively suddenly. And I think that's exactly what we're going to see. We're starting to see that with the oil market. Oil market is now tightening again, despite Trump's best efforts to claim, we got peace. And, I was looking, the Brent was up now to 111, 112. So, this starts having a cascading effect, because it raises the prices on everything.
Larry, do you see a risk of a false flag scenario being used to draw the US into war with Iran, given Israel's push for escalation?
Number one, he ignores the fact that Israel, along with the West, has been funding many of these radical Sunni groups. Israel bankrolled Hamas to the tune of $1 billion, at least. Number one, the radical Islamic Sunni terrorism that's been directed against the West had as its foundations the fact that the United States had its troops in Saudi Arabia and was invading other countries in Saudi and throughout the Middle East. So it was a reaction to our actions, what we did from initiating. The real other lie in this is that it's been Iran that's been spreading terrorism. Absolutely not true. I mean, it's just that fundamentally not true. The numbers don't back it up. All you have to do is simply look at the State Department annual report. The latest one should be out by now, the country report on terrorism for 2025. This is, what Bennett sort of hints at, though, is without the United States, Israel cannot continue its genocide and its genocidal tactics against other peoples in the region. And the good news is we're starting to see a real turn in American political sentiment towards Israel. Israel is no longer viewed as a sympathetic little country. It's viewed like a nasty disease, and America needs to get rid of it.
If the war escalates soon, how would that affect the US position in the Persian Gulf? And would it strengthen or weaken countries like the UAE?
I view the UAE as having committed a form of political and national suicide by adopting this stance. There have been tensions between Saudi Arabia and the Emiratis, and I really don't know what fully provoked that, but there is a tendency in the West to look at these Gulf states as if they are real, that they reflect a real political foundation, that they're that sort of they have some inherent organic reason to exist. And the reality is they're artificial creations. That these are all, these tribes that you divided up control over that peninsula have, now recreated themselves as nations like the United Arab Emirates. The Emiratis have a problem that they're not necessarily agreed within themselves what's up, but the current leaders have decided to align themselves with Israel and the United States. That's a bad bet. When this thing goes kinetic again, and that means the United States starts to renew its bombings of Iran, and then Iran in turn retaliates with its ballistic missile and drone attacks, the Al Dhafra air base, I think, will be destroyed. It's still intact. I think it will be destroyed. I think there will be more physical damage inflicted upon Dubai. It doesn't. So right now it's dropping out of OPEC. Big deal. It's not shipping any oil anyway to speak of. So that's a non-entity. The goal previously of OPEC was to try to control the supply so you'd have a reliable price. And this is I think one of Scott Bessent's pet projects, trying to help break up OPEC. But I think it's going to backfire significantly. And when this war goes kinetic again, it's going to weaken the United Arab Emirates to a point that it may actually cease to exist as a country, because they have no income coming. They don't have any money. They are out of money. Then they're having to rely upon the United States, basically loans from the U.S. To stay afloat. They're hoping that they get a quick end to the war, or they can get back to pumping oil. I don't see that happening anytime soon. I think this is going to drag on for 2 or 3 more months at least.
Larry, how do you interpret the UAE leaving the Arab petroleum exporting countries? And what do you make of reports about Iran allegedly using kamikaze dolphins against ships?
That was taken out of a game. It's like, remember the Ghost of Kiev, that fighter pilot that was shooting down all the Russian aircraft? That was an entity, a character out of a video game. I think that's exactly what exploding dolphins. Man, PETA would go crazy if they find the U.S. military blowing up the dolphins.
How do you assess reports of California facing rising fuel costs and reduced Middle East oil supply. Are local policies making the situation worse?
Yeah. I mean, they get a lot of state revenue comes from the gas tax, and now all of a sudden, people are paying $8 a gallon. I'm not sure what the price is, but I think it's something like that when you factor in all the taxes. California, for the very wealthy, it's a bother. It's a nuisance. Where it hits is the middle class. The folks who, especially those who live paycheck to paycheck, that they don't have, cash reserves of, they're not sitting on $10,000 or $50,000 in the bank. They wait till the paycheck comes in and then they pay it out immediately. And this is only going to get worse. It's not going to get better. And then, Trump and Besant will be running around. I think ultimately what's going to happen is Besant's going to get blamed. Trump will fire Besant. And, there'll be a whole raft of firings. Besant, Kash Patel, Pete Hegseth,